Hello everyone, my name is Maria Günak. I'm a former student of UCL and I completed my Master's in Clinical Mental Health Sciences at the Division of Psychiatry in September 2019. Today I'll be talking about my dissertation, which was on post-traumatic stress disorder as a risk factor for dementia, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Dementia involving progressive decline from previous cognitive abilities in older adults is a major global challenge of the 21st century for healthcare and society. Given that at present no disease-modifying cure exists, a central objective in the public health agenda is to identify modifiable risk factors to prevent its development or delay its onset. Post-traumatic stress disorder, in short PTSD, which may develop after having been exposed to a traumatic stressor, such as threatened death or violence, has recently been identified as such a potential risk factor for dementia. There are, however, currently no meta-analysis quantifying this risk. Our aim was to systematically review and quantify the risk of future dementia associated with PTSD across populations. We therefore searched 9 electronic databases from inception up to 25th of October 2019 without language limits using a comprehensive list of search terms. Additionally, we hand-searched reference lists of relevant articles. 2 reviewers independently screened abstracts of 50% of all articles identified, resulting in a high inter-rater agreement. The remaining studies were screened by the first reviewer. The same 2 reviewers then independently screened all full-text articles. Any uncertainty was discussed with the third reviewer. We included only longitudinal studies, both retro and prospective, to ensure that PTSD was present before the onset of dementia. We included studies where a diagnosis of PTSD was based on either clinical diagnostic criteria or a validated self-report scale. Similarly, dementia had to be diagnosed during follow-up on the basis of clinical criteria. The 2 reviewers independently assessed risk of bias of the included studies using a modified version of the Newcastle-Ottawa scale. With regards to the statistical analysis, we used random and fixed effects meta-analysis to pool estimates across studies reporting hazard and odds ratios respectively, as is recommended. We explored sources of heterogeneity by performing both subgroup and sensitivity analysis. Moving on to results, the search yielded 10,462 studies, of which 13 studies met the inclusion criteria and 10 studies of those 13 were included in the meta-analysis. All included studies were published in English and the majority of the studies were retrospective. 7 studies were conducted in the US, 2 in Italy, and 1 study each in Taiwan, Croatia, Denmark, and Australia. The duration of the follow-up ranged from a minimum of 1 year to a maximum of 17 years. In total, the studies involved almost 1.7 million participants. In 7 studies, participants were exclusively veterans. 5 studies investigated the association in the general population and 1 study in war refugees. Overall, studies were of good quality and had a low risk of bias. 4 of the 13 included studies were judged to be of poor quality, 1 of which was included in a meta-analysis. Statistically combining the 8 studies, which reported a hazard ratio, resulted in a random effect of 1.61. In other words, individuals with PTSD had a 1.61-fold higher risk of developing dementia compared with individuals without PTSD. The 2 studies that estimated the effect by means of odds ratio when combined showed that the odds of developing dementia were almost twofold, with a fixed effect of 1.99 in people with PTSD compared with those without PTSD. Amongst others, subgroup analysis indicated that risk of dementia associated with PTSD was higher in the general population compared with veteran populations, higher in studies conducted in countries other than the US, and higher in studies that included a percentage of females of at least 50% compared with studies with a percentage of less than 50% in their samples. A sensitivity analysis including only good quality studies resulted in a reduced but still significant estimate of the average effect with a pooled hazard ratio of 1.55. To our knowledge, this is the first meta-analysis quantifying the association between PTSD and risk of dementia, including studies across a range of populations and countries, and the risk of being diagnosed with dementia for individuals with PTSD is 1.61 to 1.99 times the risk for those without PTSD. The association remains significant after controlling for several confounders. Limitations include that most studies were retrospective observational cohort studies and that there was substantial heterogeneity. Nevertheless, PTSD appears to be a strong and potentially modifiable risk factor for all-cause dementia. Future studies investigating potential causal mechanisms and the protective value of treating PTSD are needed. These are all the authors involved in the project. The paper has been accepted for publication in the British Journal of Psychiatry. Thank you for listening.